Hola a todos y bienvenidos un día más a mi canal, La Pizarra Andrés. En el día de hoy vamos a reaccionar a este vídeo, ¿vale? Con Cathie Wood de Diary of a CEO. El vídeo lleva 1.100.000 visitas en cuestión de 3 días. Y, bueno, os voy a contar quién es esta tipa y por qué me parece súper interesante ver este vídeo. Vale, esta chica se llama Cathie Wood y es lo que en su día parecía una gurú de las finanzas. Consiguió montar un ETF, que lo podéis buscar, bueno, os lo busco yo, ARKK, ¿vale? Justo antes de la pandemia, multiplicó su valor significativamente justo antes de la pandemia, ¿vale? Porque el ETF se fue de 26,30 hasta 140 y después pues vivió lo que es la piña de las .com, bueno, de las .com, de las tecnológicas del COVID, ¿no? Ahora no lo está haciendo mal, está remontando, ¿vale? Y su ETF, que se llama Innovation ETF, es de lo que ella llama las compañías del mañana, ¿no? ¿Vale? Perdona que no estaba compartiendo, ¿vale? Aquí vemos el podcast es este, que es el que vamos a ver, aquí están las visitas que lleva, y este es el ETF RKK, ¿no? Que en este caso, pues bueno, aquí lo veis, ¿no? Es verdad que en el último año ya lo está haciendo bien, incluso el viernes subió un 8,46, pero aquí vemos un poco lo que fue, pues eso, llevar el fondo de 20, 30, 40 dólares a 130 dólares la acción y la caída a los infiernos que llegó a valer 31 de nuevo, ¿no? Ahora parece que no lo está haciendo mal. No creo que la tía sea una completa retrasada, sino que creo que es una tía que quiere pensar mucho más allá del momento actual y lo que ella llama las compañías del mañana, pues muchas veces no ve que están a precios superlativos, ¿no? Que es lo que le pasó en pleno COVID. Entonces, ¿qué vamos a aprender de esto? Lo primero, no olvidar que esta tía gestiona cientos de millones de euros, con lo cual tonta no puede ser, pero también pues nos toméis al pie de la letra todo lo que diga porque es la primera que ha fallado pues estrepitosamente. De hecho, su fondo pierde significativamente contra el Nasdaq, incluso contra el SP 500, ¿no? Entonces, vamos a verlo, me parece muy interesante y seguro que hay cosas que se pueden aprender, aunque insisto, no os creáis todo lo que dice, ¿no?
A decade of your research to figure out what the best investment is so anyone can get rich in the future. And you predicted that this will grow by at least 5,000%.
Yes, and my conviction is so high because of what I do on a day-to-day basis.
Is there a woman on planet Earth that manages more money from an investing capacity than you?
Maybe not. I'm overseeing nearly $30 billion.
Okay, so I might have $500.
O sea, gestiona 30.000 millones y es la mujer que más gestiona el mundo. Cosa que nos quiere decir que en muchos casos no hace falta que seas el mejor para que te vaya bien, porque esta tía ha demostrado que su gestión de momento está bastante lejos de poder ser todo lo buena que debería para una gestión activa que encima es cara.
What should I be doing with that?
So this is all you need to know.
Cathie Wood built a multi-billion-dollar fund by spotting trends before anyone else.
And now, with over 40 years of market insight, she's showing you how and where to invest too.
AI is the biggest technological disruption in history, and this incredible rate of change is making people uncomfortable. But if you are on the right side of change, investment opportunities and job opportunities are going to be enormous. But people don't know what to do. For example, many people think Apple is a very safe investment, but it's probably going to be disrupted by artificial intelligence. But yet, Tesla is going to be the biggest.
You've invested just over $2 billion in Tesla?
Yeah, because Tesla is the largest AI project on Earth. So AI has to be a top priority, not an afterthought.
So I've got questions. What's your top 10 public stocks that anybody can invest in? What's the philosophy towards investing that will make one rich
Nos va a dar el top 10 de chicharros, chicos.
over time? And then if I want to invest in AI, how should I be investing my money?
According to our research, these investments will go up more than tenfold in the next 5 to 10 years and create.
Ya cuando alguien te habla, estas inversiones se van a hacer un 10 ya empieza a desconfiar, ¿vale? Y esto es lo que yo más critico de ella, que se la ha pegado y todavía sigue con su discurso de esta empresa se va a hacer un por 10. Pues hombre, no es lo que quieres oír de tu gestor, ¿no?
Incredible opportunities for investors. So, number one,
This has always blown my mind a little bit. 53% of you that listen to the show regularly
Por cierto, el podcast este es una maravilla, aunque evidentemente no todos los invitados te van a convencer, ¿no? O te van a gustar, o vas a querer verlos.
haven't yet subscribed to the show. So could I ask you for a favor before we start? If you like the show and you like what we do here and you want to support us, the free, simple way that you can do just that is by hitting the subscribe button. And my commitment to you is if you do that, then I'll do everything in my power, me and my team, to make sure that this show is better for you every single week. We'll listen to your feedback, we'll find the guests that you want me to speak to, and we'll continue to do what we do. Thank you so much. Cathie Wood, is there a woman on planet Earth that manages more money from an investing capacity than you?
well, there's probably not someone overseeing, yes, nearly $30 billion. But I know there are teams out there, including women, that manage maybe a lot more than that.
What is it that you do?
Invest in companies that are technologically enabled and that are going to transform the world as we know it. Robotics, energy storage, artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, and multi-omic sequencing in the life science space. The last is the most complicated.
And how long have you been an investor?
I started when I was 20 years old at a
De todos modos, vos, ¿hay algún inversor que no haya hecho alguna cagadita alguna vez? Hombre, no le puedes llamar una cagadita a tener compañías cotizando a múltiplos imposibles en una plena burbuja como fuera del COVID y no hacer absolutamente nada y seguir diciendo que Bitcoin va a valer 2 millones. Yo es que es lo que digo, si tú vas con otro mensaje, pues todavía, pero cuando vas con el mensaje de estas compañías se van a multiplicar por 10, dejas de parecer un gestor y pareces el que te vende cursos en Instagram.
company called Capital Group. And I was introduced to the firm by Art Laffer. Now, Art Laffer, he's one of the most important economists of our time. He created something called the Laffer curve. He's advised most presidents since President Nixon, and he's advising President Trump as well.
And how is these 5 big innovation platforms that you speak of, how is that going to have an impact on the average person's life? Like, why do they need to know this stuff? How is it going to change their decision making and change their career? And
now that the world is moving so quickly into this new world, and Bitcoin has become so successful, and
Está bien pensar qué piensa esta gente. O sea, en algo tendrá razón, no creo que vaya a fallar todo.
investment, many people are trying to figure out, okay, how do I get involved with the new world? And when I say get on the right side of change, we think there's going to be a lot of disruption to the traditional world order. And when I say that in terms of people understanding what I mean, I think many people think Apple is a very safe investment because huge hoard of cash, very successful smartphone, number one market share of smartphones in terms of profitability by far. And yet we can tell you, and this was one of what's called the Mag 6 that led the stock market over the last few years.
the top 6 stocks.
The top 6 stocks, the market was very narrowly focused on this ilk of stock. And we were saying, you know what? Apple is probably going to be disrupted by artificial intelligence. And one of the reasons we started asking questions very early is, what is the ultimate mobile device? Ultimately, it's going to be an autonomous vehicle. Apple should have been all over that. And they were trying, and we saw one management turnover after another. This is an AI project. And what we were learning as they were turning that team over time and again is they weren't getting AI right. They were not positioning correctly.
You're concerned for Apple?
I think Apple, it has so much cash. It has such a loyal customer base. It will be fine, but maybe its revenue growth has slowed to almost nothing. And so maybe it'll be a mature cash cow. That's not what we do. We invest in technologically enabled disruptive innovation. AI is the biggest technological disruption in history. And if they're not going to get it right, we're not going to be there.
So if I want to invest in AI, if I agree with you, Kathy, and I say, I think you're right, that AI is the biggest technological wave coming into shore and the biggest opportunity, how should I be investing my money? In your view, how are you investing your money to capitalize on AI?
Many people used to invest in AI through one stock. That was NVIDIA. That was the check the box. I own the GPU, the chip manufacturer, which is the most important chip manufacturer in the AI age. And its valuation, meaning its price relative to earnings, really got up to very heady levels. And we were saying at the time, well, if NVIDIA's valuation is correct, there are going to be a lot of other winners. Who are they? Well, our largest position in the flagship strategy, ARKK, is Tesla. And as we were trying to help people...
Es que esto, claro, o sea, su posición más fuerte en ARKK es Tesla, ¿sabes? Me imagino que esto se grabó antes de la piña del jueves. Bueno, me imagino, no, seguro. Es un 13% del fondo. Pues,
People understand why we were swapping away from NVIDIA to stocks like Tesla and Palantir, which is a software provider. We were trying to explain that this new world around AI is going to happen very quickly. And Tesla is the largest AI project on Earth. I posted that on X, and Elon liked it, so it must be true. But it is true if our research is correct. We believe that the entire ecosystem associated with autonomous taxi networks is going to be worth $8 to $10 trillion in terms of revenue generation in the next 5 to 10 years. And if you want to put that in context, the entire GDP of the world today is about 130 trillion. So 10 trillion is going to
Bueno, es que aquí estamos dando por hecho que el coche autónomo va a funcionar, que va a ser implementado en todo el mundo y que solamente va a hacer el delivery Tesla. Que por lo que yo, bueno, yo de esto soy un analfabeto, ¿no? Pero por lo que yo he podido ver, hay otras compañías que están igual o más cerca que ellos, ¿no? Em, entonces, no sé, como una, a ver, te puede salir bien, pero es una apuesta súper arriesgada porque Tesla, quitando eso, la parte de los coches está muertísimo.
June, those will be Model Ys. And I'm looking to buy another Model Y because it will, in effect, be a cybercab.
Okay.
And if I chose to, I could have my Model Y drive me to work and then let it out for the day and earn money on it, have it pick me up at the end of the night. And some people will do that. And
Pero es que habéis escuchado, ¿no? O sea, me compro mi Model Y, me lleva al trabajo y después eh, lo dejo funcionando y trabajando y ganando dinero. Es que es durísimo, ¿eh? O sea, hombre, claro, si piensas así, claro que Tesla vale 30 veces lo que vale hoy. Pero estás dando por hecho que incluso Uber quebraría. Uber quebraría, los taxis dejarían de existir, el transporte público no tendría sentido. Vamos, o sea, es que poco más le falta decir que además te llevará a Marte y te dejará pasar las vacaciones en Marte, ya para seguir rizando el rizo con Tesla.
Tesla will provide the platform for that.
I think a lot of people don't realize just how much of the economy is about driving.
Yes.
So taxis, deliveries, all these
Yes.
kinds of things. It's a huge. Is it the single? I think it's the single biggest employer in the world.
Yes,
driving.
transportation,
Right.
broadly defined, yes. And it's not just on the ground, of course. As we've studied autonomous taxis moving forward, we believe the cost of transportation will come down fairly dramatically. So in the US today, an Uber costs roughly $2 to $4 per mile. At scale, now this may not be for 5 to 10 years, but this is the direction that Tesla certainly is headed. We believe that Tesla will be able to offer a service for 25 cents per mile. And because of that, we think there will be much more congestion in the roads. When you cut the price of something, you get more of it.
Yeah.
And that led us into the air. And so we've been studying eVTOLs.
Es que ahora ya el transporte por los cielos, ¿no? Sí.
What's an eVTOL?
eVTOL is an electric vehicle takeoff and landing.
Like a drone
A
type.
drone,
Ah, esa es
but
la de
for
Archer
people.
Aviation,
Yeah.
sí.
So we own Archer in our portfolio. And of course, AI is a part of this new world as well. And it's a part of the defense world as well, as we are trying to save our soldiers and move out there with autonomous drones. So autonomous mobility on the ground, in the skies, ultimately on the water.
So Tesla.
So that's one big, we think that's going to be the biggest in the short term in terms of revenue generation, the biggest application of AI. We think the most profound application of AI is going to be in healthcare. Because of AI, and this is already beginning to happen, we are able to diagnose cancer with a blood test in stage 1. Think about that. If you discover cancer in stage 1, you can save most people, right? And maybe even before stage 1. Why? This is the convergence of sequencing technologies. So DNA,
Me pregunto si la subida del 8% del otro día en su ETF habrán sido los sectarios del podcast de Diary of a CEO, que son cientos de miles, y han tirado para arriba los valores que está dicho en el podcast. No me extrañaría, ¿eh? Es verdad que son valores grandes, por supuesto que Tesla no lo han movido ellos, pero otros que haya podido decir, es mucha gente, ¿eh? La que ha visto este podcast.
RNA protein sequencing. technologies. And then the third technology that is breakthrough and already making a difference is CRISPR gene editing. The convergence of those three technologies is beginning to cure disease. So a company called CRISPR Therapeutics, which is one of the largest in our ARKG fund and in the top 10 in our ARKK fund, has developed a therapy to cure sickle cell disease and beta thalassemia. Both of those are blood-related diseases, with one treatment. Think about that. Now, the preconditioning for that is gruesome. It's almost like chemotherapy, which is going to change. But nonetheless, there's huge demand for it because, these people go to the emergency room 10 to 20 times per year for blood transfusions to save their lives. Of course, they're going
Esta subió un 7% ayer y es la principal accionista. Sí, es lo que digo. Sabes, aquí dices esto, te dan cobertura, tus acciones suben, pero vuelvo a lo mismo. Esto es lo que os explico con Nextil. O el día de mañana vienen buenos resultados y cosas revolucionarias, o esto mismo que ha subido bajará.
to go through a tough regimen. They want to live a more normal life. So it's already generating revenue. Both of those are already generating revenue for CRISPR Therapeutics and a company called Vertex.
So there's 3 or 4 different companies you've mentioned here. Tesla, the other one was Archer.
Archer is the eVTOL company, yes.
This is your flying cars, basically your drone cars.
Yes.
And CRISPR and Tesla. So if I start with Tesla, you were bullish on Tesla. You were making big predictions about Tesla before pretty much anyone else out there. I think in 2015. And at the time, in 2015, you said that you believed the stock would get above 4,000, roughly?
Right, on the old stock.
Yeah, before the stock split.
Yes.
And you were right by some significant margin. I think you predicted it would be 4,000 before the stock splits. And I think at its peak, that equates to about 18,000, maybe 12,000 at its peak
Yes, well,
in that region.
we were right about 2 early years, or Tesla was.
Esto es lo que no puede ser, ¿sabes? O sea, me hablas de 2015, me hablas de que acertaste Tesla y no me hablas de que tu fondo se pegó la mayor piña que ningún fondo se ha pegado jamás en tan poco tiempo. Un fondo grande. De eso no hablan, ¿no? Esto no es riguroso.
Got to where we believed it would go 2 years before most expected. In 2018 and 19, many people, as Elon was discussing and describing production hell for the Model 3, many people thought the company would go bankrupt. And yet we knew that if Elon Musk could create a reusable rocket that could land on a barge in the water, he would be able to figure out how to produce at scale the Model 3. That was, to us, a simple conclusion. Now, as in hindsight, as we're learning from Tesla, production hell, and they themselves were worried. That's why Elon slept on the floor in the production factory and just became maniacally involved, which is how he works. So yes, and now our prediction, the stock is, I'm not going to be exactly right on this, $270, $280. Our prediction in 5 years is 2,600. And 90% of that valuation comes not from the electric vehicle, but from this robotaxi platform. Because the electric car, if you think about it, is a one-shot sale. Sell and hope they come back when they're replacing their car.
This essentially means that we'll be driving cars that we can click a button and then it becomes an autonomous taxi. So I go on holiday, I have my Tesla car at my house. When I go on holiday, the car turns into a taxi and starts chauffeuring people around. It makes me money. But also from the consumer's perspective that are trying to hail a taxi, at any point I can go on my Tesla app, press a button, a autonomous car comes to me with no one driving it, and it takes me to my destination with no driver at all.
Right.
And then the recurring revenue model, I believe, is you subscribe.
It probably could. It could be you could subscribe to the network, or they could, maybe it could be either or subscription or a la carte if you don't think you're going to use it that much. So now, when I'm here in the UK and Europe, many people do not believe what you just said, and they don't because your regulators have not allowed FSD here. I think they might. Somewhere in Europe, I think they're beginning to consider it. Maybe even in the UK here, they are considering it. In St. Petersburg, Florida, where we're based, I can go from my house to anywhere. Now, we still have to sit in the driver's seat for now, but in June, or soon thereafter, when they turn the system on, if regulators permit. Right now, we're state by state. I think that's going to change so that we'll have federal regulation so that this can happen a lot faster. One other thing about Tesla, though, in that $2,600 number, we do not include much for humanoid robots. Now, this is happening faster than we thought. And the reason it's happening faster is humanoid robots. They are the convergence of the same three technologies or innovation platforms as robotaxis. Robotics, so actuators and so forth, getting them to work. Energy
Yo creo que esta tía vive en el mundo Yuppie, pero bueno.
storage, battery operated, and AI. So Tesla's way ahead of the game on humanoid robots, and yet we have very little. Now, Elon thinks that the humanoid robot business is going to dwarf the robotaxi business. And we think he's right, but longer term. So as I mentioned, we expect all in around the world, including China, not just Tesla, but the entire ecosystem, an $8 to $10 trillion market in the next 5 to 10 years. For humanoid robots, we expect a $26 trillion revenue market. Now, that's going to be a little further along. Robotaxis will happen faster, but it may not be as distant as we were once thinking.
For anyone that doesn't know, humanoid robots are basically robots that we'll have in our home and at work. So there was a video that I think Elon retweeted the other day showing one of the humanoid robots dancing.
Dancing, yes.
Was that real? I was like looking at that video thinking, surely that's not real. But he confirmed, I believe, that it was real.
Yes. Now, when we went to the Cybercab event,
Es que esto, tío.
there were some humanoid robots dancing there, but they were tethered and they were remotely controlled.
Yeah.
Now, Cybercab, I think, was...
About a year ago.
Yes, maybe. So since then, they've been able to untether them. And I do believe that that dancing robot was not tethered and not remotely controlled.
It was quite shocking to see a robot doing that, because if a robot can have that dexterity and mobility, and then you overlay that with the AI technologies that are accelerating rapidly, it begs the question. And the question is quite clear, which is, what about humans?
Yes. And just to put a finer note on this, Elon will not be satisfied until these robots can thread a needle. So that's where we're going.
What does that mean for humans?
So, the history of technology is that it has been a net job creator throughout history. But humanoid robots are getting awfully close to what we do, right? So it's a good question. I think creativity is
Se viene la peli de Yo Robot, chicos. Acordaros.
a big part of that, ingenuity and creativity. And, I think there are going to be a lot of new inventions in the future. So let's see what those are. But even today, there's something called vibe coding. Have you heard of it? Okay, because we've moved into the world of natural language programming.
What is vibe coding for someone that doesn't know? It's
Vibe coding means you know a natural language. I know we all know a natural language. Ours is English for the most part, but it could be any language. We're going to be able to go to ChatGPT, or especially now they just launched, I think last week, something called Codex, Replit, and Anthropic's fantastic for programming. And we'll say, this is what I'm attempting to do in English language. And I've seen demos of this just internally. We're going to replace some of our software that we're buying from outsiders and customize it for us, because we don't have to buy off the shelf anymore. One size fits all. I think there's going to be a lot more customization and personalization and creativity explosion here. It's interesting that this is happening when the demographic profile of the developed world is as it is. We have a very low unemployment rate in the US. I know the unemployment rates in Europe and the UK have been dropping to much lower levels than where they were stuck for years. I remember thinking, wow, double digits. We have a demographic issue. I mean, if you watch what Elon Musk worries about the most, he worries about the population implosion because collapse in population in the developed world because we're not producing children above the fertility rate. We are setting up for a shrinkage. With China is going there, Japan is going there, and so we're going to need productivity to help us if we can't find human beings.
Okay, so you're saying that the robotics and AI could actually fill the gap that we lose in terms of productivity because our society is going to be like an inverted pyramid. It's going to be more elderly people and less young people.
Yes.
So the
Yes.
robots are going to.
Yes, absolutely. Productivity is going to be essential. So as we're looking at real growth ahead, and when you think about real growth, you should be thinking, okay, somebody's benefiting from this. And I'm going to set up the number here by describing what has happened historically. If you look from 1500 to 1900, and you try and figure out what real GDP growth.
Yo creo que esta chica lo que nos ha enterado es que nosotros queremos ganar dinero en esta vida, no en la vida que viene, ¿sabes? Porque todo lo que está diciendo parece totalmente inviable en el corto plazo. O sea, no digo que algún día a lo mejor no se pueda conseguir, pero hay que recordarle a esta chica que queremos ganar el dinero en vida, no en la tumba, ¿sabes?
Was back then, real economic growth. As best as Brett Winton, our chief futurist, in consultation with academics, can determine, it was roughly 0.6% per year. And then we had the Industrial Revolution. We had the internal combustion engine, telephone, electricity. And for the past 125 years, real GDP growth has been 3%.
Vamos a lo bueno.
Yeah, I feel like I can't figure out how the displacement rate meets the creation rate. So the destruction rate of current jobs will meet the creation rate of new jobs, because many of these new jobs, I guess there's some of them we can't predict yet. I understand that, but even the ones that we can't predict yet would need to be inherently human, i.e., need the skills of a human for them to be occupied by humans. So what category of stuff is that? Like my girlfriend's a breathwork practitioner. She's upstairs now with 10 women and she's teaching them breathwork.
Okay.
So she's fine.
Yeah.
Like, because they're doing that in person, whatever. She's fine.
Well, and maybe she's not if people decide
To do it on ChatGPT.
Yeah, on ChatGPT. But if they want to be with a group of women,
Yeah.
and learn from an expert whom they respect, there's as much the social experience that's going to become more important. Relationships are going to become more important. Many people in our business, I think, are going to be out of jobs because the business has become really nothing. I shouldn't be this disrespectful, and it's not quite right, but at all. But so many are just hugging benchmarks, whether it's S&P 500 or MSCI World or the NASDAQ. That a machine can do that. A machine can do that easily. And that is what passive investing is machines doing it. I think in order to earn a place in the new world, you've got to add a lot of value, more value than a machine can. So in our case, we're saying, okay, well, our stocks are not in those benchmarks. And therefore, we are doing original research, trying to figure out who they are and where they are, these companies that are going to transform the world.
Why can't AI replace what you're doing in terms of...
So, and we think about that all the time. So AI can use pattern recognition. It's all based on history, right? It can use pattern recognition, maybe, to do what we're doing. What are the three characteristics that define an innovation platform for us? The most important one.
Esta tía ha tenido que pagar por el podcast lo que no está en los escritos, porque ha venido aquí a contar lo que le interesa para pegar un empujón a las compañías que les interesa. O sea, esto yo no sé ni si es legal, en mi opinión, ¿eh?
Is they follow something called Wright's Law, which measures the learning curve, how fast the costs are going to decline with this new technology. Technology is deflationary. Costs fall over time, and they're passed through into lower prices or better performance, one or the other. That is the most important. A machine can figure that out, I'm sure. But asking the questions are going to be important. Like, there wasn't, before 2014 when we started ARC, much on autonomous mobility or eVTOLs, or for that matter, AI. AI had become science fiction. There weren't any breakthroughs in recent years, but then we got some breakthroughs. So Wright's Law is the first, figure out that cost curve decline and see how quickly the technology can proliferate.
A ver, el problema es dónde ponen la línea de estas cosas, ¿vale? Porque que un gestor pueda hablar de sus carteras me parece bien. El problema es cuando vienes a probablemente uno de los 5 podcasts más grandes del mundo, ¿vale? Y te hacen 1 hora 40 en el que publicitas todas sus empresas y tirándote unos triples, pues como los que se está tirando, ¿sabes? O sea, no es Carlos defendiendo sus empresas con valores empíricos, no. Esto es una tía diciendo que el día de mañana los robots que están a la vuelta de la esquina y que el negocio más lucrativo del mundo van a ser los robotaxis y que no sé qué, y se tiran unos triples sin fundamento ninguno, publicitando principalmente sus empresas. Hombre, no sé dónde está la línea, desde luego, pero lo que nos está contando hasta ahora es un chiste.
Proliferate across sectors. That's the other criterion here. The technologies that we are following are going to cut across economic sectors and apply to more than one group of people. And then the third is that these technologies serve as launching pads for new technologies. So in the case of DNA sequencing, which was the base technology, we needed that before CRISPR gene editing could be created. We needed to be able to understand what was mutating in the genome, where the programming errors were, so that gene editing could come in and edit out those programming errors.
And do you think in 5, 10 years from now that unemployment is going to be higher or lower?
In 5 or 10 years, let's assume we don't have a policy mistake and a recession, so just steady state. I think it will be the same or lower. And most of this is because those baby boomers are retiring.
So they come out of the employment.
They come out of the labor force, and the generations following them are smaller. Even now, what's happening is we're passing through the baby boom echo, meaning the children of the baby boom. That cohort was, I don't think it was any bigger than the baby boom population.
Do you think there's, because of the speed of, and the acceleration of AI, the length of careers has radically reduced? Because you'd go to school, then you go to university, you qualify as, I don't know, an accountant, and that's like a 10, 15-year process. You get a job as an accountant, you start working your way up. But now with AI coming in, some of these jobs are being completely annihilated extremely quickly.
At the same time, vibe coding
Yeah.
is booming. So I think what's going to happen, and this will be very healthy for productivity, we're going to have a lot more experimentation and people taking risks on themselves. And maybe this idea of a corporation as we know it is going to change radically. You know, crypto is enabling distributed autonomous organizations. Just like Bitcoin, there's no one governing it, right? It's a distributed network. And let's see how these do and how vibe coding and AI integrate into the crypto, and I'm going to stop calling it crypto because it really should be called digital assets world, which legitimizes it more. Crypto sounds nefarious.
Yeah.
Digital assets is where, more than young people, and I'll say young people are spending more than half of their discretionary, their free time online. And so property ownership online is becoming more important. It's being legitimized by the way people are spending their time.
On this point of robotics and AI, your biggest position, I believe, is Tesla, isn't it, in your fund?
Yes.
But obviously, Elon decided that he wanted to go into politics. And he wanted to do
Elon.
the Department of Government Efficiency called DOGE, so teaming up with Trump to try and eliminate government waste. Now, as an investor,
Bueno, ahí está la prueba de que esto es antes de los tweets.
you must not love that.
Well, I have two. I have
Because it did impact
points of
the
view.
performance of the company. Do you know, I drive a Tesla when I go to America, and it was the first time ever on the last trip to America in January. I live in LA now. Where I'm driving my Cybertruck. It's full self-driving. It's incredible. But it was the first time ever I thought, shit, I could be attacked. So I probably shouldn't get a Cybertruck. I should probably get something else, because I heard of all these reports of people being attacked. And so it was quite interesting to hear in the earnings report, which I listened to, that there's been this decline in revenue, in profitability, in vehicle sales growth, etc., in Q1 of this year, which I think even Elon in that earnings call highlights is a consequence of him becoming political.
Yes, I think that surprised him.
Claro, Tesla vende menos coches porque se ha metido Elon en política y no porque los coches chinos han superado, por ejemplo, a Tesla en Europa, ¿sabes? Si es que al final, porque dan los mensajes a medias. No digo que lo de Tesla que lo de Elon no le repercuta negativamente, pero ¿por qué no dicen que Biden le está comiendo la tostada, por ejemplo?
So I have many thoughts about this. Our government has become so bloated, it is scary. And our indebtedness is growing. And if we want to remain the reserve currency of the world, we're at risk of losing it. And on our tail is the whole digital asset world, right? So government spending is taxation. It's either taxation that's going to happen immediately or will happen in the future, or will happen through inflation, which is the most regressive tax at all. So I think the sentiment was right in terms of getting in there and seeing what technology can do for the government, which is really
La
what's
parte de
happening.
las cripto me la voy
So
a
what are
saltar
what's your top 10
y vamos
in
con el
terms of
top 10,
public stocks that
chicos.
anybody can invest in? If you had to give me your top 10.
So I'd have to give you, and they're listed on our website, and I won't go in order, I'm sure, but of course, Tesla, Coinbase, Robinhood. Roku is an operating system for connected TVs, highly misunderstood stock. CRISPR Therapeutics, which is the
Gene editing.
gene editing for sickle cell disease and beta thalassemia. Palantir, I think I've mentioned in the AI software space. Archer just
De momento voy 0 de 7, chat. O sea, de aquí 0 de 7. De hecho, si tuviera que comprar una de aquí, esta es que hace tiempo que no la sigo. Esta no sé lo que hace, los demás sí las conozco. Mm, Robin Hood quizá, porque al final comerle la tostada a los bancos tiene todo el sentido y al final la gente joven va a buscar una aplicación joven para comprar cosas. O sea, Robin Hood, quizá todo lo demás, ni fu ni fa.
moved into the top 10. It's the eVTOL company, and it also signed a deal, an exclusive deal on both sides, which was quite impressive, with Anduril, which is the most sophisticated defense tech play, and is growing like gangbusters. So that's terrific.
Yo llevo CRISPR desde 2021 y llevo un menos 48. Pero eso se le ha olvidado a esta chica contarlo. Tú no te preocupes, que vas menos 48, pero en 4 ratos la tiene más 200. Solo espera un poquito más y ya lo tienes, ¿eh? Si lo ha dicho esta chica, esta no se equivoca nunca.
Shopify, which is a shopping platform backend and really using AI.
Roblox? Do you know-
Oh, that's the one we're missing. Roblox.
which is a game, right?
Yes, it's a user-generated gaming company. Fascinating, and it's also a social platform. It started for children younger than 13 years old. And what's
Bueno,
interesting
hemos visto las
about it
empresas,
is they've stayed
no
with
sé a
it because
vosotros, a mí no me
60%.
convence.
If you had $1,000 to invest and you had to invest it somewhere, where would you be investing it?
Well,
And how would you be like the general philosophy towards wealth creation at such a stage? If you had $1,000, how would you be thinking about creating wealth for yourself?
a couple of things. Averaging into either an ETF,
What's an ETF?
ETF, exchange traded fund. So it treats a group of stocks like one stock. So ARKK it's 36
Y se viene, chat, la publicidad de ARKK.
stocks, but you can buy them by purchasing ARKK.
And you can do that on your mobile phone by
You
downloading
can do it on your mobile
a
phone.
bunch of different apps that allow you to just buy that one ETF, which means you own 35 stocks.
Yes. And
And your team are basically choosing what those 35 stocks are
yes.
based on your research.
Right, and ARKK are our highest conviction stocks, and they offer an exposure to all of the innovation platforms that we've talked about. Whereas ARKI here in Europe is focused primarily on artificial intelligence and robotics, because we think that convergence is going to be
Yo sigo pensando que esta entrevista han pagado lo que no está en los escritos, los de ARKK, que estoy convencido.
pretty explosive. What you
Y si no, es que el chico este no se vende bien, porque tranquilamente le dice que esta entrevista son 100.000 y la tía le sale rentable.
don't get there, and you do get in ARKK, we also have in another very focused fund, ARKG, which is really healthcare applications of AI, and other healthcare names that we think.
And what's the sort of psychology or mentality one has to adopt to be a good investor?
Depends what you've bought. If you buy a strategy like ours, which would be in the aggressive growth strategy, put it in, averaging in over time, just like with Bitcoin, as I mentioned earlier, averaging in over time.
What does averaging in mean?
Averaging in means, buy a little every month, maybe every payday. I think one of my daughters was buying Bitcoin every week, but not a Bitcoin. She couldn't do that. A Satoshi, so. And close your eyes. This is a long-term investment. If we're right, according to our analysis. Now, this is our research, our analysis, no promises. We can't do that. But according to our research, the technologies around which we have centered our research and which have focused our investments, we believe, will go up more than tenfold in the next 5
Claro, o sea, en los próximos 5 años harán un por 10.
to 10 years. And that's how much explosive growth we have ahead of us as these technologies
Y
converge
se queda más ancha que largo, macho. O sea, es alucinante.
and create incredible opportunities for investors. And I'm hearing a lot of people as they get into investing. Of course, they have their day jobs, but once they have accrued enough, they're making choices about dialing down their day jobs and spending more time investing. You asked, what are some of the jobs of the future going to be? I think individual investors are going to be providing for themselves if they are investing on the right side
Bueno,
of
vamos a
change.
So
pasar
if you're
a
right, that means that by investing your 401k,
consejo para los
30%
jóvenes. A
shoot
ver.
straight after. When I asked ChatGPT earlier, I said, who is the number one woman in the world in investing? It repeatedly said your name. So that's a pretty remarkable thing to have accomplished, especially in a male-dominated industry where there isn't many women that manage to rise to the top of that industry. So what is it about you in hindsight? It's difficult to be objective about oneself, but what is it about you that meant that you were successful in a male-dominated industry, in an industry that's incredibly difficult to be successful in?
My advice to all young people getting into their first job especially, but even later jobs, is my mission when I started was to make my boss look brilliant. Now, why do I say that? It's much more applicable today and possible today than it was back when there were no computers and no cell phones, which is when I started, right? But what did I do? My boss wanted to communicate. He was an economist, wanted to communicate in charts that he couldn't find. So I figured out a way. I went to our time-sharing system. That's all you could do back then. Time-sharing is an ancient mainframe technology. And I figured out a way to make these charts and delight him. And I loved doing it, and I loved learning. I loved learning about technology. I learned and about economics through him. So that was the first thing. And then,
why is it important to make your boss look good?
Well, I think because if you do make him look good, first of all, you owe him a debt of gratitude if he turns around and gives you more
Chicos, hasta aquí el vídeo de hoy. O sea, no puedo más con esta chica. O sea, no creo que haya sido una pérdida de tiempo total, pero es pues hablar por hablar y las palabras lo aguantan todo. Y entonces, pues oye, pues si puedes decir que algo se va a multiplicar por 10, pues mejor por 10 que por 3, ¿no? Y así todo, ¿no? Y si los robots nos van a ayudar con todo y los coches van a volar, pues oye, porque vas a decir que los coches vas a tener que conducirlos tú, pues mejor digo que me llevan a todos lados y ya está, ¿no? Pues he hecho un poco durillo al final, de hecho he ido soltando trozos. Pero bueno, está bien verlo, pues hombre, al final esta chica de una forma o de otra está gestionando lo que está gestionando y oye, pues ese mérito sí que se lo damos, ¿no? Entonces nada, si os ha gustado me dejáis un like, un comentario y nos vemos en el siguiente vídeo. Se despide la Pizarra Andrés.